You know, every time I meet with a group of manatechers, they want to know, how did you discover embryotose? And it's interesting, it's like it was meant to be. It all started at Aunt Helen's house when I was about 9 years old. And to keep us kids busy, they would send us out looking for buried Indian treasure. I know year after year we'd dig a lot of holes around looking for the treasure. I remember specifically when I was about 9 years old, we found this round object with a hole in it. And we had access to sparklers. So we hit upon the idea, let's drop a sparkler down that hole and we'll see the gold shining and glittering. All my cousins huddled around the round hole, and we dropped the sparkler in, and boom, fire shot out of it, burned our eyebrows, our eyelashes, all the front part of our hair. That was the first time I'd really used aloe on a burn, and I remember all of my cousins, when they'd put the aloe on, it was amazing, you know, how well aloe worked. I became very interested in chemistry, and I wanted to teach chemistry like my favorite teacher, which was a chemistry teacher. I taught chemistry for around 4 years, and during that time I had a chance to get a master's degree in chemistry, and then I decided, I've learned how to make all these different chemicals, but what do I want to make? And they said, well, if you want to know what to make, you need to become a pharmacologist. And to really learn pharmacology, you go to medical school. So Texas had 5 medical schools. I thought, well, I'll apply at San Antonio because I grew up in San Angelo, and that's not far and it's about the right size, and I was accepted there. However, the teacher said he would be much happier at Southwestern. And he said, we're going to accept you pending you go to Southwestern and convince yourself you're not going to go there. So I called my good friend that I'd grown up with, and I said, how far are you from the medical school in Dallas? And he said, oh, it's just a few blocks you can walk from here. The next day I got up and I went in to interview, and I remember talking to Dr. Goth, who was the head of the department, and I said, well, I'm just here because I have to be here. And they told me that you have something to offer that I really should consider in your program. And I, you know, what is it? And he just laughed. He said, you know, most people are begging to get in, and you're wanting me to sell my program to you. And then when he explained to me that he had Dr. Garriott, and he was at that time the world's first formal toxicologist, I was interested in toxicology, so I thought, well, maybe I can live by my friends, and you know, that was just fortunate. I think if I hadn't had the friends real close, it would have been a deciding factor to keep me from going there. So now I'm going to university. I moved into Dallas, and one of the first things I did, looking through Dr. Goth's book, is I noticed that he didn't have aloe in it. And I was convinced that aloe, you know, was the best thing for burns. And I said, why don't you have it in your pharmacology text? And he said, that's interesting. He said, you know, I use fresh aloe myself, but no one's been able to find the biologically active ingredient. Sometimes aloe works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's why it's not in my text. AvaCare came and offered us a small grant to study aloe, and Dr. Goth had remembered my interest in aloe, so I was assigned the project. And I guess, you know, if I hadn't been blown up at Aunt Helen's and ended up at the medical school, I would have never had the opportunity to do this project for AvaCare. So I run our general drug screen, which normally would find any known drug. And what was interesting is there was no biologically active ingredients found. I told the AvaCare, you know, people that I knew aloe worked from my personal experience all the way from the time I was blown up at Aunt Helen's. They came back to me in about a year and said, well, we've raised $5 million to build this lab. Is that enough? And I was just amazed. I thought, you know, I didn't plan on doing that. What I wanted to do is go back to San Angelo and teach at the college. not figure out what was in aloe. But I ended up here by mistake. I had this opportunity, and it just seems like aloe just keeps running into me. I needed to find a chemist to help me run my instruments. And it seemed like every time I offered the job to someone, they would take a job somewhere else. As it turns out, a UPS truck brought me a chemist, Dr. Eberendu, who was looking for a job in Dallas. It started to rain. He needed to get across to catch a cab, and the UPS truck driver felt sorry for him and said, well, I'll take you to the hotel down the street, but I need to make one stop. And on the way there, he stopped and he got the packages out, which were chemicals. And Dr. Eberendu thought, gosh, they're using chemicals, maybe they need a chemist. And he came in and applied, and he was perfect for the job. And it wasn't until a year later that I found out that Dr. Eberendu accidentally was brought there. So it seemed like every time we had an obstacle, it was removed. So it was meant to be. As it turned out, we kept dividing the fractions, testing them, and we found Ace Mannin. Ace Mannin was developed topically as a hydrogel wound dressing, and it was approved for injection as an immune stimulant. And then we started on the oral development. And in order to develop something orally, one of the first things you have to do is find the LD50. That's the lethal dose. In other words, you give a drug to rats and you determine how much it takes to kill half the rats, and that's the LD50. And as it turned out, we had contracted with Hazleton Labs, which is one of the largest pharmaceutical independent labs. They do this for companies all over the world. And they were not able to find an LD50. They gave the rats more and more, and first you try feeding them, and then they were tubing them, like pumping the ingredients in. Finally they killed a rat. We were all excited about it. And then on autopsy, as it turned out, they said we just exploded the rat. It'd be kind of like pumping 5 gallons of food into you, and I thought, well, that would probably explode me. When we met with FDA said they don't know of any drug that you can't get an LD50. And I said, well, it's not like a drug. And as it turns out, we were at a dead end. We couldn't first provide the LD50, which enables you then to go into people and you start doing your dosing. So I thought, here, how can I just stop here? What was interesting is Ace Mannin acted like a special nutrient. It seemed that whatever cells were trying to do, Ace Mannin would help optimize the effect. This made me think of Paracelsus and his secret elixir. Paracelsus was a fascinating person. He had brought back from Asia specific treatments, and these were some of our very early drugs. However, he had this elixir that he didn't make a claim for. It was something that just helped support life and enable you to live life to its fullest. So it really sounded like a nutritional product. In fact, with the new law, that's what made me go back. The new law says that dietary supplements promote optimal health. Well, that sounded like what his elixir would do, is it enabled you to live life to its fullest. And I thought, that's very fascinating how similar that is. So this opened the door to the regulations. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which is commonly called the SHEA, came about just when we were at a stop. What Ace Mannin was able to do is it provided mannose. Mannose is rare in our modern diets. Used to, when we ate a lot more fiber and a lot more roots and foods that are found out in nature, you could get mannose, but it's not something that's in your general diet. It's required for making glycoproteins and cell-to-cell communication. Therefore, Ace Mannin was perfect for the SHEA because it was a good dietary supplement. It supplemented mannose and it fit perfectly. So what the company needed to do is find a marketing arm. Ray Robbins went to church with me, and we'd served on a lot of committees together, and he would ask me what I was doing. And Ray was always telling me the best way to bring new technology, to the public is network marketing. And so I thought, we have a dietary supplement. Ray's been in the vitamin, mineral business. So I thought, we ought to bring this to Ray. So we contacted Ray Robbins, and at that point I'd been working with another good friend, and I met Sam. Now, I'd told Carrington, since they were going to go into a different line of development, that I really was ready to retire. I felt like I'd found out what was in aloe, but I would like to help them license it, and I helped work on the licensing agreement from Carrington to Manatech. And in the deal, I promised Ray and Sam that I would help them with a marketing story. In other words, Sam said he would go around, he'd like to take me with him and hear what I would tell the people about these products. And I remember that first meeting we had with the Havners, and Sam came out and gave a talk. I was impressed at what a good speaker Sam was. And then I gave my talk. After he introduced me, we went next day to another meeting. Sam gave his talk, and about 10 minutes of my talk, which I thought was amazing how well he did it. And as we crossed, he introduced me, and I walked across, and before I got to the podium, I said, Sam, you gave my talk? And he said, yeah, I liked yours better than mine. And I thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, is teach him how, and he's learning quick. So I gave another talk about how these products work and how they could help, benefit your general health. In the next meeting, Sam took about 7 minutes of that talk, plus the 10 minutes, so I felt like he just about had a talk. And he offered me the opportunity to give a few more talks, and before the year was out, I think I gave over 100 talks to different groups. And what amazed me is how much great results we had with our products. Sam offered me, the company got together and said, you can become our research director. And I thought, well, that's kind of what I was before, and maybe I can develop some other products. So I helped with the basic products that Manatech sells. With, you can always improve your products, and that was fun. Plus, I like to talk about it and listen to the people's stories about how this had helped them optimize their health. While I was out speaking one day, it hit me. I was looking at new articles on glycoproteins and how these 8 sugars are used to form glycoproteins. Mannose is very important, and it's a key, ingredient. And so I thought, what would happen if we added these other sugars? And I told Sam I think we could get a patent on this concept. And so we filed the patent for embrotost. The reason that's important and the difference is at that point in time, all the scientists thought that you didn't need even mannose, that you could make all of the 8 monosaccharides that you needed from glucose. That didn't make sense to me. And at that time, though, the scientists or the scientific community thought that this is how it worked. So, that was good. That played to our advantage because, in order to get a patent, this must be unknown and unobvious. So we knew that you needed these 8 sugars to make glycoproteins, but it was unobvious to make a dietary supplement that contained them because scientists thought you made all you needed from glucose. So that was the first criteria for a patent. And if other scientists knew this, that you needed it as a dietary supplement or in your food, then you'd get no patent. So when we created this new product, embrotost, we had to create words for it. And we used glyconutrients, glyconutrition, And I remember the first time we started talking about that, I used to ask other scientists, you know, have you heard of glyconutrients before? And I'd search the web, and I remember the first time four hits on the web when you looked up glyconutrients or glyconutrition. I thought, well, we're starting to make an impact. And I just did that the other day, and there was over 200,000 hits. About 2 years after we filed our patent, one of the first major articles that supported our idea came out, where they discovered that there are two pumps in the small intestine that look for mannose that you consumed and pump it into your bloodstream. So to me, I thought, you know, God wouldn't have put those pumps there if He didn't count on us getting mannose from our diet. If you have mannose in your diet, then you cut off the enzyme that converts glucose to mannose. So God designed it where if you get it from your diet, you don't have to run the enzyme. But if you don't, the enzyme can make it, which again shows how important it is. After that, more and more data came out, and data is coming out just daily, practically, that support the importance of glyconutrients. I was really pleased in March 2001 when the Journal of Science featured glycobiology on the cover. And then in their literature, they talk about the structures of the 8 monosaccharides responsible for cell-to-cell communication. This is taken straight out of that article. So, you know, when science recognizes the importance of these 8 sugars to cell-to-cell communication, I felt like our science, you know, had been validated. You have an opportunity to share a wonderful gift. And I feel blessed, you know, that even though I wasn't planning on being blown up, or I didn't want to go to Southwestern Medical School where I would have the opportunity to discover embryotose, but it just seemed like I was directed, you know, and it was my mission. And I believe that because of my relationship with Ray, Sam, and everyone, it was their mission to take this gift of embryotose all over the world.